So next week, we'll talk about exactly how I don't do it all. But this week, let's talk about some methods for reassuring ourselves that we are doing enough. So somebody commented in the group, they're just starting, they have a kindergartner, and they were saying, it only takes us 2 hours to do schoolwork. Somebody please tell me that that's enough. And so this is a big deal in minimalist homeschooling, right? Because we want to fill our child's education with exactly what they love and they need. We don't want to strip it down. We still want to be preparing them, right? We've taken on this really big responsibility, and so we get ourselves all stressed out about preparing our children. Their minds, their hearts, their character, all of it, right? And so we take on this huge responsibility, and how do we know whether it's enough, right? So I have 4 things that I tend to do to reassure myself, because I go through the same thing. I actually did it yesterday because we finished school really quickly yesterday, and I just second guessed myself. Did we do everything? Did we do enough? What did we? And so I thought that instead of me leaving a really long comment on this poor woman's post, I would just talk about it with you guys, because I would also like to hear your techniques. Leave comments below if you have ways that you reassure yourself and you reaffirm that you are doing quote unquote enough in your homeschool, regardless of how long it takes. Okay, so I don't know, maybe for some of you, do you look at the clock? Like, if we've done so many hours, that's enough? That is not one of my methods. So one thing that I do is, first of all, I look at a list of what they are doing. So too often we look at all the things we're not doing. But when you really write down what you are doing, what you did accomplish in that day or that week. So I did this yesterday with my 5th grader. I was like, wait, is he really done? And I wrote down everything he did. And guys, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. He did like 11 different academic things during the day. And he mopped the dining room floor. So to me, I was like, oh, yeah, there we go. Because that's actually more than he would probably be doing in school. And I didn't intend for him to do 11 things. It just worked out that way, and it still felt like he had all this free time. So number 1, list what you are doing. And a lot of times that'll be all you need to be like, oh yeah, that's plenty, right? We're beyond enough. We're at plenty. And then number 2, this is a big one for me. Weigh what you are doing against your goals and your values. That is a good comparison. Not the clock, not what everybody else is doing, but what are your goals for your child and what are your values? Like, what's really important to you, and are you hitting those, right? So that's how we reassure ourselves really that we have a successful and a meaningful homeschool, which to me is so much better than enough, right? So enough is this moving target. We can never quite ascertain what is enough, right? Because there's always more that you can do or should do or would do or could do. And so what is enough, right? And so instead, it's much more meaningful and it's much more satisfying to look at your values and your goals and say, yes, we did it, we're doing it, we're making progress, right? Because that is going to feel like success. That is what's going to keep you feeling good at the end of the day, that you have accomplished what you really, truly want to accomplish, instead of all the things off Pinterest or whatever it is, right? So number 1, list what you are doing. Number 2, take a good look at your values and your goals and see if you're progressing against those. Use those as your comparison, not the external world, right? Okay, so number 3, you can look at what traditional schools do in a day, and usually you will feel really good about your homeschool. Yes, Anna, it's so true. We're all indoctrinated to believe that more is somehow better. But I would argue that if you're really doing well in the things that are most valuable to you, then that is success more than just doing a whole bunch of things, right? And that's how we can simplify while adding focus and while adding value to our schools, right? So less is more when it's the really important things, right, are getting the limelight. So absolutely. So number 3 was look at what traditional schools are doing, because you will realize how little time they are actually spending on core academics. So you can pull up online like standard school days for kids at different grades for different schools, because some schools will post what they're doing. And when you do that, you will see that a lot of it is enrichment. A lot of it is transitions between things. And what you have to remember when you're looking at traditional schools is that we call ourselves teachers, but we're not really like teachers, because so much of a teacher's job is managing a large group of kids at very different levels. We are managing a relatively, I know we have some people here with like 10 and 16 children, but we are managing a relatively small number of kids, right? So I like to think of it more as I am more like a private tutor or a personal tutor for my kids than a teacher, right? So if you're going to look at a traditional school, consider how much of that, how long it would take the kids to do their work if they had a tutor sitting with them all day at their disposal to get them through their work, right? So yeah, they're busy for 8 hours, but how long would it take them to do that amount of work if they had somebody working with them, not even one-on-one? What if it was like them and 3 of their closest friends, or them, you know, what if it's 6 kids, right? It gets done so much quicker because we are more like personal tutors for our kids than we are teachers, right? And so when you look at it that way, it makes a lot more sense. And that's when you can see that you are doing as much as the schools, even though it's going to take so much less time. And so you have a different job fundamentally than a teacher in a school, not just because we are educating all aspects of our children, right? The whole shebang. We're not segregating anymore their character from their academics, from anything else, right? Now it's all one big education. So you have that, and that's very different. But also, it's very different in that you're not managing 25 to 30 students. And it's very different in that you don't have to keep kids occupied for a certain number of hours. That's part of the job description for teachers, right? They have to keep the kids in class, in school, for a certain number of hours, right? And so you don't have that restriction. So yes, teachers have to meet standards and academics and things like that, but another part of looking at their day is spacing out. Hi, Tammy. And so it's spacing out then. Teachers have to sort of space out their day knowing that they're going to have kids sitting in the classroom for 8 hours, right? And so they're going to interject different things to keep the kids sort of happy for a really long period of time. And we don't have to do that kind of managing of a classroom because we don't have 25 to 30 kids that we have to keep occupied for 8 hours, right? From this hour to this hour. And we need to keep them out of trouble, and we need to use their time productively. We have a totally different job description from teachers. So number 3 is go ahead and look at what traditional schools are doing, and then look at how what you're doing is so very different from their job description and what they in reality have to deal with. Okay, and number 4 is gain an outside perspective. So this is really important, I think, for all of us, because we tend to, I think it might be a female trait, be overly critical of ourselves. Hi, Tammy. So I think women tend to be really overcritical of ourselves, and we tend to see all the little things that go wrong every day. And we want to compare to all the perfect things we see outside. So somehow we think everybody else is perfect and we're completely flawed. And we have this really odd sort of perception of what we should be in the world. And so, and we're also too close to it, right? We see every minute of the day. So we know all the minutes that our kids aren't paying attention and they're goofing off. We see all the answers they're getting wrong as well as the ones they're getting right. And sometimes it's really good to just gain that outside perspective. Somebody who's not looking at the brush strokes as closely as you are, somebody who is stepping back and seeing the artwork that is developing, right? And who can give you that support and reassurance and say, you know what, in the grand scheme of things, you are doing an awesome job. They're not nitpicking all the little things. They're seeing the bigger picture, the work in progress. And so I think that that's really valuable. And whether you need to go to a Facebook group like this one and get sort of like anonymous feedback that you are doing enough, I do think that's valuable. I mean, for me, I have a very honest husband who's also very supportive. So he's obviously the one I'm going to go to when I'm like, how are our kids doing? Right? And because he's very active as like he's a basketball coach and a baseball coach, and he takes my boys to Cub Scouts and things like that, he sees a lot of kids in similar ages. So I feel like he's a good barometer for me, because when I'm so close and I see the struggles that we're having during the day, and I see, you know, we're having really hard days, and I would have expected them to pick up this concept by now, or this or that, then it's really good to have somebody who's outside of it, who's not so close, take a look and be able to more objectively tell you how beautiful your painting is coming along, okay? So try to remember that you are the artist. You're right up on there making every little brushstroke and detail, and you know how you want it to look, and you're trying to get it to that point, but you need somebody who can step back and say, wow, that's really coming along nicely, okay? So that's basically it. I would love to hear in the comments how you tend to reassure yourself when that doubt creeps in and you think maybe you're not doing enough. So go ahead and leave comments, and next week we'll talk about how to not do it all. And we'll go from there. So I will see you at 1 o'clock next week, again, live. And in the meantime, I hope you all have a great week, and I am wishing you all the simple things. Bye, guys.